Well, let's bring in political panel now. I'm joined by Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes. Thanks for coming in. And Labor MP Josh Burns. I want to start with the sexual assault allegations made by Brittany Higgins and the way that those allegations have been handled. Hollie Hughes, the Prime Minister has announced 2 reviews in response to this. What do you think needs to come out of or needs to be achieved by those reviews?
I think we need to be really careful when we talk about this, because at the end of the day, we're not talking about a cultural issue. We're talking about an alleged criminal act. And Ms Higgins was provided with support when she came forward and given options with regards to speaking to the Australian Federal Police. Now, at the time, Ms Higgins moved away from pursuing any criminal complaint. However, I understand that she has started that process again. We do need to be very careful that this is a criminal matter and not make too much commentary around it and put any of that future prosecution in jeopardy.
Do you think there is a broader cultural issue here, a broader cultural problem?
I think we can always do better. Ms Higgins was provided with support. Her privacy was respected. Clearly, she feels that we should have done more as a party and as a parliament. And of course, Celia Hammond has wonderful experience in dealing with these sort of systematic issues within an institutional environment. So as I said, we can always do better, but we do need to be very, very mindful that this is a criminal matter now, and we should be very mindful of not playing politics with it.
Josh Burns, Labor has backed calls for an independent review here. Who do you think should lead that, and what exactly should they be looking at?
It's a good question, Jade, and I agree with Hollie in that there are separate issues here. One obviously is the alleged rape of a young female staffer, which absolutely needs to be investigated, not by anyone associated within government, but by the authorities, and obviously the Federal Police are probably the most appropriate, or the ACT Police to handle that. I think that there are other questions around the way in which information was transferred. Now, the Prime Minister has said that he was only notified in the last 24, 48 hours, whereas obviously members of his staff were involved in the management of this really serious issue. So I would suggest that instead of having the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet investigating that particular matter, it would be far more appropriate to have someone at arm's length from government handling these really serious issues. But Hollie is right, this is potentially a criminal investigation, and we owe it to Ms Higgins to make sure that she has the ability to achieve justice. And I think the choice that she had to face, which was the choice between her career and potentially reaching out for justice, is completely unacceptable. It's one that no one should have to face, and it's one that we in this parliament and in our country should strive to make sure that no one again has to face that choice.
Hollie Hughes, there are reports today that some senators have known about these allegations for months because there were confidential submissions made to a parliamentary committee looking into the Department of Parliamentary Services. Were you aware of these allegations before this?
No, I wasn't aware of the inquiry at all, so it's all news to me. I learnt about it at the same time everybody else did earlier this week.
Josh Burns, how confident are you in Labor's processes for dealing with these sorts of issues at the moment? Anthony Albanese said today that an updated code is going to National Executive next week. What do you think that should include? What needs to change from within Labor?
Well, I haven't seen the draft. That's been handled and managed by Sharon Clayton, so I can't comment on it, but Anthony Albanese has said that he is confident that it will be passed through the National Executive, and at such stage I'll have a chance to have a look at it. But more broadly, I can say, Jade, that this is not a partisan issue. This is not something that is exclusive to the Liberal Party or the Labor Party or the Greens or the Nationals or anyone else. This is a matter for the Parliament. This is also a matter for all workplaces to make sure that we provide a safe environment for all workers. And it's clear that the Parliament has fallen short. The Parliament has not served people like Brittany Higgins properly, and doesn't matter what political party you're from, we need to do better than that.
Let's move on to the vaccination rollout. Preparations are underway. We're told that it will start next week. Hollie Hughes, do you think that it should be mandatory for aged care workers to get a COVID-19 vaccine?
The vaccine is not compulsory for anyone across the board, and Australians have an amazing uptake of vaccines. We run at around 95%. I don't think it should be made compulsory for anybody, but I do think that there will be employers within the aged care sector who are very encouraging of their workers getting that jab. But of course, as the point's been made, we aren't 100% sure around transmission. We know it's very, very effective when it comes to minimising the symptoms of COVID, reducing the mortality rate around even older Australians that will be receiving it. But we're not sure about the transmission side. So it would potentially serve no purpose to make it compulsory. We do want to make sure that Australians are safe and comfortable and confident. And I think as the vaccine rollout continues and more people receive it, people will be increasing their confidence around the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine, and we'll see more and more Australians take it up.
There was Health Department research released last night that showed that less than 50% of Australians surveyed would get the vaccine as soon as it's available. Josh Burns, why do you think that people might be hesitant here?
Well, I have to say that Hollie has been a great advocate for vaccines for a long time, which has been consistent with that. But if I'm so honest, Jade, the same cannot be said for members of the federal government. So the most obvious example is Craig Kelly, who has run a systemic campaign against vaccination and also against health authorities, which has I have no doubt, undermined the confidence that people have. He's a high-profile member of the Morrison government. And I think that, the Morrison government needs more people like Hollie who take a firm stance on vaccines and less of the misinformation that Craig Kelly has been spouting. More broadly than that, I would say that Australians should be confident. These vaccines are safe. These vaccines have been judged by the TGA, which is an outstanding authority, an outstanding government agency. They are some of the best in the world, and they have held the standards of these medicines to a very, very high standard. So our message on the Labor Party side is, we really want these vaccines to get out there. We want the government to succeed in the rollout of vaccines. We think that it should be done a little bit quicker. It's been almost a month since Pfizer has been approved, but on the whole, we are absolutely barracking for the government to get this right and to get on with rolling out these vaccines.
Hollie Hughes, I'll let you reply to that one. Do you think that the government as a whole has done enough to reassure Australians here that the vaccines will be safe and will be effective?
Yeah, and look, Josh is right. And I know this is like the Mutual Admiration Society at the moment, but when we're talking about the TGA is an independent body who has conducted all of the analysis and research and reviews of the vaccines. At no point, even though in many instances lots of organisations have worked in an expedited fashion throughout the pandemic, the TGA has not put in place an express approval or done anything different from how it would normally approve a medicine or a vaccine. So that's included incredibly detailed research, separate to even what was being approved overseas. So the reason, that we have seen longer rollout times here than we've seen overseas is because the TGA has been going through such a thorough program to ensure the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. And I think that should give Australians confidence. I think people are within the government and within the opposition talking about the importance of receiving the vaccine, because at the end of the day, we all want life to go back to normal, and the vaccine offers the best opportunity for that to occur as quickly as possible.
Just finally, Victoria is expected to come out of lockdown tonight. That's good news for people living there. Josh Burns, you're a Victorian.
Proudly so.
Oh, dictator Dan in the land of Danistan.
All right, we
Josh.
might be moving away from that bipartisanship now, but was it an overreaction in your view to impose this 5-day lockdown? How do you reflect on this now?
The guiding principle that has kept us safe in this pandemic and that has been help Victoria get over the second wave and that is going to help with the rollout of these vaccines is that we listen to our health experts. We do not undermine them, just as we don't second guess the TGA. We don't second guess the health experts who are making decisions about how they can control a very, very infectious virus. So, obviously no one wants to go into lockdown, not least any Victorian, but, Jade, to see 40,000 tests overnight, to see Victorians turning up to get tested, to try and protect themselves, their loved ones, the community of Victoria, and to be rewarded with this lockdown ending tonight is really reassuring and a huge relief. And, I want to thank everyone who got tested, but also thank our incredible health workforce who are, when it is absolutely necessary for them to do extra work, they've stood up, they've done what's needed to be done, and I'm thankful that Victoria is going to be allowed out of lockdown.
Hollie Hughes, this type of lockdown has been used in a number of states now. Is it fair to criticise the actions of the Victorian Premier here when it looks as though, hopefully, this has worked in this case?
Absolutely, it's fair to make criticism. I'm a senator for New South Wales, and if Dan thinks he's got the gold standard, I guess Gladys has the platinum one. When gold standard, is made up of knee-jerk shutdowns, restaurants, when you've got people leaving quarantine in garbage bags, and that's allegedly gold standard, when Victoria is no longer carrying any of the load of returned Australians from overseas. Absolutely fair to criticise. How do you run a business in Victoria? You know, we had restaurants and bars and cafes who were expecting enormous trade over the weekend with both Valentine's Day and Chinese New Year. We're talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of produce and food that was unable to be utilised. You speak to restaurant owners who not only had all of that fresh food that they were unable to use in the perishable items, but they'd had staff working in the week leading up to prepping that for that weekend. So they had lost wages, they had no revenue coming through, then they had the additional lost costs. There are 0 cases in Victoria today. Why not lift the lockdown immediately? Why make it midnight tonight? I mean, it's ludicrous that this is the way that some of the premiers are reacting. And honestly, the criticism that comes from some of them of Gladys Berejiklian is so hollow and ridiculously partisan. New South Wales, our economy is opening and opened up and happening, and our businesses are being supported. We are carrying the load of international travellers coming back. We have over 4 times the volume of international travellers that have come into New South Wales and Victoria. We've had less than a quarter of the cases.
All right.
Our hotel quarantine's gold standard, if not platinum.
We'll have to leave it there. We are fast approaching question time, but Hollie Hughes and Josh Burns, thanks very much.
Thanks, Jade.